This is my presentation on the features of European feudalism. So, the first thing that we need to talk about feudalism is what is feudalism? Who runs it? What is the economy like? And who are the major power holders? The king and the vassal's role within society are key to understanding the social hierarchy of society. Another major feature is why feudalism became the primary government system throughout Western Europe. We'll also examine different forms of feudalism throughout Europe, the social hierarchy within feudal society, feudalism's impact on modern society, and the importance of religion in feudal Europe. What is feudalism? Feudalism is a system of governing whereby semi autonomous landed nobility have certain well defined responsibilities to the king. So, in layman's terms, it is a government which has one ruler, and the ruler will give land or fiefs to a vassal or knight that completes a task that benefits the king. That is the most basic and essential part of feudalism. It's sort of like a triumvirate. You have your king, your vassal, and the reward for the vassal is the fief. So it's a sort of a relationship between the king and the vassal that allows cooperation throughout the kingdom. So after the vassal completes a task for the king, he will be granted a fief, and this fief can be used for agriculture, can be used for the armory, could be just a homestead. But before he is granted this fief, he has to pledge his allegiance and say that he's going to provide military service for the king. So that's a benefit for the king, giving some of his lands for some protection. And the king also protects the fief because that's part of his kingdom. So it's sort of an endless cycle of protection, and it's a relationship that is very important to feudalism. So the main economic system used by feudalism is manorialism. It's an economic system tied with the feudal society. It consists of a manor, usually around 1,000 acres, that's owned by a knight or a vassal, that has agriculture holdings that was tended by serfs or peasants. Serfs or peasants are the workers of feudal society, and they do anything between farming to carpentry to blacksmithing. Another way kingdoms gained wealth was by conquest and plundering other kingdoms. So the king and vassal's relationship is pretty complex, but basically the king uh, needs something done. He finds a vassal to do it, and after that is done, there's a ceremony called the commendation ceremony, which has two parts: the homage and the fealty. The homage requires the vassal to sign a contract with the king promising his military services, and he will receive protection from the king's military then. Fealty is another oath, and it's required to become a vassal. It signifies your loyalty to the king. The vassals, after these two processes, are given their fief, and they can do whatever they want with it, basically. And powerful kings and vassals would have castles as a fief. Why feudalism became so popular? Feudalism as a government became extremely popular after the collapse of the Roman Empire because the Romans provide a power vacuum for the rest of Europe. So there was a brief moment of extreme localized government causing a lot of kingdoms rather than one giant unified authoritarian body. So some famous um, feudalist nations and kingdoms were within England, France, and Spain. The feudal kingdoms were ruled by a king, and the heir would usually be a descendant uh, of the king, usually through bloodline. And if there was no descendant from the king, there would usually be someone else taking the position, which caused civil wars. Another feature of feudalist society was chivalry, and it was a code of morals that was commonly attributed to knights from feudal Europe, and it deals with honor, courtesy, and kindness. There are different forms of feudalism throughout Europe. Some of the more classic feudalism are found in England, Germany, and Italy, but one major exception was France. In the 11th century, the feudal revolution occurred, and that split most of the feudal territories into many pieces, except for the larger counties that could regain that land, which caused a really just a lot more feudal sort of societies throughout there. Shown on the map, there is at least 50 plus on that map. So the social hierarchy within feudalism. So you got your king or leader. He is the head of the kingdom. That's just he makes all the decisions. He decides what's going to happen, where to conquer, what to do. The members of the king court are other members of the royal family. Other positions like the counselor, the scribe, the bishop. Vassals are a free man that holds a fief, and he has done the homage and sworn fealty. He is part of the military with the king, and his descendants will be too. A knight is very similar to a vassal, but the knight is currently doing military service, unlike the vassal could be already done with his military service. Peasants are people who worked in a craft or a trade or a farmer. They work for the vassals and the king, and they're the lowest echelon of society. Serfs are lower than peasants. They're the lowest form of peasants. They're bound to their lord, and they cannot be sold like slaves. But in essence, they are like indentured servants. So they didn't have the same rights as peasants did. And this diagram right here shows the basics of feudal society. You have the king on the top. You have the lords, vassals to king. You got your squire, bishop, scribe, military leaders, other religious leaders, and your knights, vassals to lords. You have military leaders, maybe sort of mid-tier military leaders, and knights and vassals. Peasants and serfs are people that farm the land, provide smaller protection. They make stuff. They can be a blacksmith, a carpenter, something like that. So modern influence, feudalism has influenced society in a lot of ways. So Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a satirical movie about feudal England. It shows some of the aspects of feudal England in a comical sort of way. It is pretty famous, and some modern democracies still have kings and queens. They do not have power, but the kings and queens are from feudal times, even though they might have a parliament or a democracy as the actual ruling body. And also, feudalism is sort of the bridge between the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. It's sort of just like ushered Europe through the Dark Age and really helped just Europeans after the fall of the Roman Empire. So the religious impacts on feudalism, religion was a unification factor. The king and the peasants had the same religion, so that's one thing they have in common. Bishops lived like nobles. They lived with the king in his castle or where he lived, and Christianity was the main religion of medieval Europe. So, for conclusion and a quick summary, feudalism allowed Europe to recover after the collapse of the Roman Empire. This was good, but also had some consequences that hurt the social hierarchy because it didn't allow people to work their way through society, unlike other systems that we have today. And overall, feudalism propelled Europe into the New Age and allowed the Renaissance to flourish after the end of feudalism in the 1500s. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are my works cited, and have a good day.